Very warm welcome to you all. This webinar today is aimed at those businesses operating in hospitality or with a licensed premises. So that includes pubs, hotels, cafes, club venues and so on. We hope to provide today some practical advice and guidance about planning for and operating safely once reopened during the current pandemic situation. Saturday, 4th of July is clearly a big milestone for the sector in England, and we hope the session today contributes to this reopening going smoothly across Warwickshire. You may have some specific questions about your own premises, which we can respond to during the call. The webinar is brought to you by safety and regulatory colleagues from local borough, district and county council. And many thanks to our partners at Coventry and Warwickshire Chamber of Commerce, Coventry and Warwickshire Growth Hub, Warwickshire Towns Network, the FSB and the BIDS for helping us to promote the event today. Some important housekeeping. First of all, this event is being recorded, so should you remain logged in, we take this as your consent to take part. Feel free to switch on or switch off your camera as you see fit. The information provided today is current and correct to the best of our knowledge on Wednesday, the 1st of July. 2020, so please note this if you're viewing the webinar at a later date. And in terms of the format, first of all we'll introduce our panel and their area of work, and then we'll move to a discussion of some pre-prepared questions, and then we'll open up questions to our participants on the call. My name is Ian Flynn and I work in the Economy and Skills Service at Warwickshire County Council. And I'm the facilitator for this webinar today. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel today, starting with Paul.
Hello everybody, my name's Sergeant Paul Calvert. I'm the Harm Hub Sergeant for Warwickshire Police, involved with the licensing process around Warwickshire, but also heavily involved with the COVID partnership process that's taken place over the last few months. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Daryl?
It's taking a long time for my mic to unmute. Can you hear me yet?
We can, yes, thank you.
Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Daryl Townsend from Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service. I run the fire protection department that deals with all the fire safety for businesses in Warwickshire. And again, we've been heavily involved in the COVID partnership Paul alluded to earlier.
Thanks, Daryl. Jonathan, are you on the call?
Yes, Ian. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to join you this afternoon. My name is Jonathan Toy. I am the Group Manager for Trading Standards and Community Safety for Warwickshire County Council. I also chair twice weekly a regulators meeting where the representatives of all the district, boroughs, police, public health, fire authority and Coventry City Council come together to try and provide advice and guidance based on the regulations as they've developed.
Thanks, Jonathan. Henry?
Hi, my name is Henry Biddington. I'm Principal Environmental Health Officer for Rugby Borough Council. I've been involved with Jonathan's regulatory meetings twice a week in relation to the response to COVID. And I also enforce or regulate health and safety across Rugby Borough.
Okay, thank you. And Gemma?
Hi everyone, my name's Gemma Stainthorpe. I'm Health Protection Programme Manager at Warwickshire County Council. I've been a member on all of the groups that I've mentioned previously to me introducing myself, and I'm just here to offer public health advice relating to COVID. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And finally, do we have Paul Reed on the call? Okay.
He hasn't joined us yet. Sorry, Ian.
Okay, hopefully we'll have him along soon. Okay, so thank you for joining us today. We'll move now to some of the questions that we've already received. So panel, I'd like to start with a question around risk assessment in the hospitality sector. Can you clarify that whether or not risk assessments are required?
Hi Ian, do you want to come in from a health and safety point of view? Risk assessments are required, and it will be need to demonstrate that your premises can be COVID secure. So yes, risk assessments will be required for all premises as part of health and safety legislation, which can be which to demonstrate that you've set out your methods of keeping your premises, your customers and your staff safe from infection. So it will need to be a specific COVID-19 risk assessment.
Okay, thank you. Daryl, you had your hand up. Yeah, I think you're still muted there. So we'll come back to you, Daryl. Anybody else want to ask about risk assessment, or Rani, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Regarding risk assessments, do we need to display them anywhere or on the website or anything, as long as we've done them?
There is a COVID secure poster that you can download from the .gov.uk. That may be one thing that you could display to show that you've taken precautions. But panel, do you have anything to add to that?
You don't need to display your risk assessments as such. They'll need to be available if somebody wants to look at them. Say a regulator comes in for health and safety purposes, so you will need to have them available.
Yeah.
They should be written down. And I think the advice was if you employ more than 50 people, they should be publicised on the website. Was when the retail advice came out. So I think that's still part of your COVID secure for your premises. So if you employ more than 50 people, I believe that the advice, the guidance was that they should be publicised on your website.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add in with regard to the risk assessments? Obviously, once they're written, they're a living document. So please revisit them constantly during, the process of the days and the weeks to come, because things may happen that you haven't covered that you need to cover. So review them, revise them regularly, and to cover yourselves, I would date them when you review them as well, so it shows that chain of review of it and any alterations you've made. But it is a living document. It's not just a one-off document.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple more questions. If you are asking a question, if you hover your cursor towards the bottom of the screen, you'll see a menu bar pop up with a hand, so that you can click on that hand if you want to ask a question, because I can only see so many screens at one time. So thank you. Or you can pop a question in the chat section, which we're monitoring. Jonathan, you have your hand up. You're on mute, unfortunately.
I lowered my hand and forgot to click off the mute, so apologies. Rani, I was going to ask you a question back, if you don't mind. When you do your risk assessment for your premises, do you share that with your staff, with your teams? Because
Yes.
one of the things you do. Yeah. One of the things that's come out quite strongly with some of the other sectors that we've been working with is the best thing to do is as Henry said, not necessarily publicise it, but actually sharing it with your staff, having it available so your staff feel comfortable that all the different areas they might think about has already been covered. I think that's been a really, really good piece of practice. So if you're doing that, then that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, we are. Is there some? I mean, I hope I've done it right. We have done it, but we've got a staff meeting tomorrow evening for everyone regarding the new guidelines. Is there someone I can, if I send it to someone, they can see if it's done properly, kind of thing? Or could I send it to somebody to check?
Yes, if you send it into me to start with, just tell me what area it is, then I can link into the right people. I'm not sure where your business is, or
Jonathan, what we can do is we can any correspondence from this webinar, if you send your email to business@warwickshire.gov.uk, we will display that at the end of the session, and we'll triage those inquiries to the right team.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'll do that. Thank you.
Sorry, Jonathan, to butt in. Daryl, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I think I've sorted my microphone problems now. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Thank you. All I was going to do is actually reiterate some of what Paul said, actually, and sort of go towards the fire risk assessment side of things as well. Many businesses that have been closed won't have done any of their regular checks of things like fire alarm and other related systems for fire safety. So dig out your current and hopefully up-to-date fire risk assessment and any of the adjustments that you've made to the business for things like social distancing, one-way systems and so on. It's quite important to make sure you're not blocking fire exits or overriding any of the fire safety issues that you would have corrected with your fire risk assessment in the first place. And as I've had to say a couple of times, and it does sound a little rigid, but the fire safety order hasn't been modified or withdrawn for any of the COVID period for obvious reasons, because it's a life safety piece of legislation. So although we are more than happy to advise people on what they need to do, it will be based on normal standards, and we've been asked a number of times about things like propping open doors so that they don't have to be wiped down or touched as many times with customers in, or whether it be staff or customers. And unfortunately, no, if it's a fire door, unless it's got an automatic device on it that will release it on sound of the fire alarm or power failure, then the door can't be wedged with a physical object or a hook. It has to only be done with automatic devices. There are plenty of battery operated versions on the market, so they can be looked at, but just be aware that you're not propping anything open with a physical item, and review the fire risk assessment, as Paul said, as regularly as possible, so that if you've made any changes to the business as it materializes and as days pass and weeks pass, we'll all get more used to what's going on, and any guidance that changes, do ensure that you review any risk assessments you're producing specifically for COVID, but also remember the fire risk assessment. And that was it, really.
Okay, thanks, Daryl. I can see some questions coming into chat, but before we move to those, what's the social distancing requirement for pubs? Obviously, there's been some changes to the 2 metre rule.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that question, Ian. So with regards to social distancing then, so within an inside space, so indoors, whether it's at home or whether it is within a pub or restaurant environment, you are able to meet as 2 households. So that can be 1 household, including anyone in their bubble, and another household. As long as you maintain social distancing, but you're allowed to kind of congregate, as a table or as a, a party, if you like, inside. Outside, it's still 6 people from outside of your household, so that still remains. All of this is with social distancing. With regards to social distancing, it has been 2 metres. It still is and should be where viable. There are lots of sort of situations where it is still very viable to do the 2 metre distancing, and I still think that is really important to try and aim for that. Where it's not viable, this might be in places like kitchens, perhaps the setup for staff, etc., moving past each other isn't going to really allow that, and it's not a viable option. If that is the case, then 1 metre is okay in that situation, but it would require extra mitigating sort of actions. Those would be an increase in hand washing and surface cleaning in those situations, so really upping that when it's 1 metre, keeping activity time within the 1 metre or at the 1 metre as short as possible. It would also be using perhaps screens or barriers between staff and customers, or customers. And also we would encourage either back-to-back or side-to-side working as opposed to face-to-face. So that sort of reduces the risk again of transferring the virus. And again, a final kind of mitigation would be fixed teams or partnering. So perhaps grouping people together who are working within the business and the workplace to try and keep transmission as low as possible. So that is the current guidance on social distancing in these establishments.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on that or questions from the participants?
Hi, it's me again. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Rani, yeah.
So when you say social distancing, so for example, if I've got a table of 6 people inside, can they sit on one table? They can't be 1 meter, they don't have to be 1 meter apart, do they?
Okay, so within sort of the household group, it's quite complicated, but so within each household, including a household or a member that is a part of their bubble, they don't have to socially distance.
Okay, so the other people inside it, yeah.
So if you had 2 families, you'd want them to have, you know, 1 meter, 2 meters really between them, but still sort of sitting on the same table is fine, but trying to kind of maximise that distance as far as possible. Yeah.
Okay, that's going to be really hard to achieve.
It's tricky, but then again, thinking about the viable sort of question, so we say 2 meters, we say 1 meter if it's not viable, and you need to really think about what is viable for your, you know, for your business and how you work, and we understand that, and that is why that 1 meter rule is there as well. We just sort of asked people to aim as much as possible for the 2 meter if possible, but we do understand the restrictions that you're facing.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Rani. Colin, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I did. I think Gemma probably answered the question, because I work with Ronnie in Bedford Street. We were putting the tables out this morning, and we were aiming for a 1 meter space, because obviously all the tables are booked. But listen to Gemma, we should aim for 2 meters, but if not possible, 1 meter will do.
Yes, I would say yes.
Right, that's the clarification I was after.
And you, with your 1 meter, just think about some mitigating, so sort of encouraging hand washing, encouraging that extra surface cleaning as well in between sort of turnover, and thinking about that really. If people are sitting side to side, that's better than sitting kind of opposite across the table. So it's just as much as you can think about those extra mitigations, the better really.
Yeah, and just following on from that, I mean, the other guys might know the answer to this, but you know, obviously the first night opening, people are going to be excited. You know, after a few drinks, they might get a bit more together than normal. If the guys, the environmental health or the police come in and see a group of people clearly not obeying the rules, are the pubs getting blamed for that? Or obviously we can do all we possibly can to make sure that we're keeping social distancing to the right measurements. But if it gets out of hand, what's the liability on the owners?
I think I'll hand that over actually to perhaps Paul Calvert.
Yeah, no problem. You have, as a venue, you've got to demonstrate you've done everything possible to put everything in place for your premises to prevent, prevent risks, things escalating, etc., etc. You need to be able to demonstrate, and that's through your risk assessment, your plans, etc. Be able to demonstrate. We are not there to try and, well, we can't close you down, but you know, look at fining you and things like that, where you've done everything possible to actually mitigate the risks. If there is an issue and you need assistance from the police because of an issue, like any other normal weekend, if you had a problem and the police came, we're not going to come down and start putting marks against you because you've tried to deal with it. You haven't, and you've asked us. If we get there and we see there is clearly no COVID risk assessment, there's no measures in place, the premises that we've gone to has clearly just opened up on Saturday because they can, and they want to make as much money as possible because they haven't been able to for months, and everything's gone wrong and they've not planned, then that's when we'll start looking at it. We've already said we're in a partnership group across the county, and that's where the partnership group will be crucial, because the police will supply that evidence to the partnership agents, like Henry said about the health and safety finding, the enforcement side of that. It's that will be enforced when it comes to COVID risks, and that will be the partner agency that do it. But the police will quite happily supply statements, video evidence, body-worn videos, etc., to those partner agencies to do that enforcement if we believe that premises has not done all they can to prevent the risks. You cannot prevent everything happening. There is so many unknowns about Saturday that we as police are nervous, as the partners are nervous about, as you are nervous about. But all we can ask is you do everything in your power to do those risk assessment, mitigate those risks, put plans in place, plan for the worst case scenario, okay, plan for being exceptionally busy, because that's what we're anticipating as police. It's going to be exceptionally busy. It's going to be a New Year's Eve plus, in our opinion,
Right.
okay, in many towns. You look at what's gone on around the country with the beaches and even things like McDonald's opening and things like that, the crowds that they've pulled. And that will be no different, I think, to Saturday night. So, and I know I'm rambling a bit here, but I just have to stress, you've really, really got a plan for being busy and the worst case scenario. That includes door supervisors, etc., all that in place as if it was a New Year's Eve, for want of a better word, with the added COVID on top, which makes it twice as risky for you. You've got to plan it. And then after a couple of weeks, we will know where it's going, but you've got to plan early.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul. It's a relevant question here in the chat from Lydia, but before we go over to that, Henry, you had your hand up next, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, Paul. There is health and safety enforcement that could be used where there is no controls in place or no risk assessments have been done, and where pubs or restaurants are just blatantly ignoring anything or the guidance or anything they've been told to do. Potentially that could lead to prohibition notices, but normally it would just be us working with premises to try and get them up to a level. If we get complaints, we're not going to come in heavy-handed. We're going to try and work alongside premises to get themselves so they can be COVID secure. And I completely agree with Paul with relation to planning. Try and plan for the worst case scenario. I would suggest putting out on your social media, this isn't going to be a normal night in your pub. This is going to be, people also need to plan if they're planning to come into your premises. So I think utilise your social media and utilise it for your customers, so they're completely aware that this is not a normal night out in the pub. It's going to be different, and they're going to have to expect different things going on. And I recommend all businesses try and get that message out to their customers. We as local authorities, our local authorities, going to be trying to get that message out to the public as well, to try and mitigate some of the problems which we are as regulators, and probably you guys as businesses are envisaging occurring on Saturday and Saturday night. So,
yeah, thanks, Henry. That's really important.
Sorry, can I just add one more? Sorry, can I just add one more thing? Yeah. Obviously, as we're aware, you've got the business and planning bill going through Parliament currently. I must stress to everybody, it hasn't come out yet, so please don't think that anything's changed with regard to your licence or anything yet till that comes out. But when that bill does come out, and looking at things like off sales and things like that, with that bill also comes an additional power for the police and the local authorities for expedited reviews on off sales. It's specifically in that bill. So if premises are doing off sales of alcohol and it is causing a significant increase in crime, disorder and social behaviour, there's a piece of legislation within that bill that means that we can call an expedited review within 48 hours to remove all off sales from that specific premises. So just to sort of make that aware, there are additional things coming in with the bill, but that is part of it as well.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Jonathan, sorry, you had your hand up.
I just want to add a couple of bits from what Henry and Paul were saying. One is, if there's ever a time to change a catchphrase of drink responsibly, it would be drink responsibly and socially as well, and combine those together. It's really important we kind of get that message on to patrons that are coming through. So just Henry makes some really valid points about how you do that bit about drinking responsibly and socially responsibly is vitally important. I think there's a couple of bits as well that I think are worth mentioning. Is one of the approaches we've always adopted along with Gemma from Public Health is with all our retail businesses is start in a way you can manage and then bring it to scale. And I think it's a very, very important point, probably the most important point in your sectors. Do things that you can manage, that you can cope with, test out how it works, and then actually bring it up to scale. So if you've got a certain number of chairs or table of chairs or that you're trying to set up, how will it work really well for you? Start with a level that you know is going to work, and then actually increase it bit by bit by bit. That doesn't just help your business, it also helps your customers and it helps your staff. And I think the other bit really for me is you know, there will be some premises that do get overwhelmed, and in your planning, how will you manage if you do get overwhelmed? What will your steps be in order to actually get a bit of control of the premises? Because none of us on this call, none of the regulators, the police, anybody else want to have to come and be talking to clubs, pubs, whatever it is, about things got out of hand. Actually, no one wants to do that. We'd sooner be speaking to you on Monday, as we have with a number of operations, saying, you know, you did a fantastic job. Well done. How can we help you for next week? So really think about what happens if you do get overwhelmed. There has been locations in our county that have absolutely got overwhelmed when some of the premises have opened up, and it's been an absolute nightmare, not just for the premises in how they manage, but also for local residents and local services. So we're not speaking this out of turn, we've seen it happen. So part of your planning is, if things start getting out of hand, how will you manage to kind of calm it down and get a bit of control over it? Think about that really carefully.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. There's a related question we had from Lydia about responsibility for managing the same household. Lydia, did you want to put this question yourself?
Sure. Sorry. Hello. Can you hear me all right?
We can. Yes. Thank you.
So I just wanted to ask, like, where the responsibility lies in terms of, obviously we can, so when we open, I own Warwick Street Kitchen in Leamington, and when we reopen, it's going to be on a reservation only system. And obviously I can do everything I can, which is I can say to people, do you confirm that you are from the same household or only from 2 households? But then ultimately, where does the responsibility lie there in terms of, you know, I would expect my customers to manage that themselves if I have done everything within my power to make sure we're doing our bit. But actually, if they've all met up and they're from 7 different households, who has the responsibility there?
Who'd like to come in on that one?
Do you want me to go first? And then I'll pass over to Gemma.
Yeah.
I would say personally, from obviously the police perspective, we've had responsibility for enforcing certain things when it comes to gathering over the past few months and things like that, and I think it's very similar to what we would suggest to yourselves. You have to do everything you possibly can to mitigate. So you have to ask the question, you have to state this is the rules. We can't have, if they say yes, we're all from the same household, tick it as a tick box or something on the form when you do the reservation. You've asked the question, they've said it. We're not expecting you to go on voters registers and start looking to see who lives where and everything like that. You know, that we've got to be realistic about it. People are going to lie to you. You're going to have groups of people that come in that aren't from the same households. They lie to us, they're going to lie to you. You know, people are going to lie. You've just got to try and demonstrate you've done everything you possibly can to stop it happening and mitigate the risks and demonstrate it. From a policing perspective, that's what I would say. Whether you would ask people to leave your premises if you thought they were breaching it, that's a decision you make yourselves, I would suggest. But it's one that you just need to be asked the questions and challenge if necessary.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. And I'm not sure if we've sort of covered that off already, but there's a question around the need to take customers' contact details when they come to a pub or a cafe or elsewhere. So do businesses need to take customers' contact details? Perhaps, Gemma, this leads into conversation around test and trace.
Yeah, okay. So the answer to that question is yes, businesses are required to collect contact details, names and contact details of people who are visiting their establishment. There'll be a variety of ways in which you could do this, and it's up to you as a business to think about what suits you best. You all work in different ways, but there has to be kind of a way of collecting that information and then keeping it for 21 days is what is required. it could be, I mean, if you're thinking about people booking online, often they register with their names and their contact details, and that's quite a simple thing to store and keep for a period of time. For people sort of dropping into pubs and things like that, it might require a little bit more thought. Perhaps it might be a quick slip to fill out, perhaps, you know, and that's really up to you as a business to start to think a little bit creatively about how you might want to do that. So for the test and trace service nationally, which you should all sort of probably be aware of by now, we need to be in a position where we can contact people who may have been in close contact in your establishments. And as I say, that's up to 21 days. You need to hold that information. And I'd really kind of, it's for your benefit as well. It's for the whole community and business benefit. Thinking about, we all know what's going on in Leicester at the moment. We know that there are, I think, around 37 other areas at risk across the country at the moment of being in a similar position. If there was a situation where this arose in one of the establishments, if we had all of the contact details very readily to hand, we can really close that down quite quickly. And that then protects, you know, the local community and also local businesses, because none of us want to be in a position where we're in another lockdown situation. So I'd really encourage you to think about how best you can do that, sort of with regards to supporting the test and trace service. Also linking to that, just be mindful as well that your staff and rotas and things like that, hold on to those for 21 days as well at the moment. And sort of staff, obviously you'll have your staff contact details, but just be mindful of who's been where at what time, so that again they can be contacted if necessary, and it will, you know, hopefully benefit and contain anything that needs to be contained quickly. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Gemma. If any of the businesses on the call want to come back to that and suggest some of the ideas that they've had for this and see if they're adequate, then yeah, by all means ask us. Okay. Anything further from the panel on that?
Just one thing in really. Obviously, I was speaking to Gemma about this earlier about can a premises insist on someone providing them contact details. Obviously, there's no law around the test and trace side of things, but a premises, like it does anywhere else when it comes to people entering them, have the right to make it a condition of entry. So therefore, similar to where certain premises on certain events make a search a condition of entry, or whatever it may be, you can, as a premises owner, make it a condition of entry to your premises that they must supply details for test and trace. If they refuse to, then obviously they're not welcome in your premises and they have to go elsewhere. That's the bottom line on it, and the way the premises can get around people that are refusing. I'm sorry, it's a condition of entry. It's something a premises voluntarily puts in. It's not something as police or authorities we can enforce as such, unless it becomes a part of a licensing condition as such. But obviously it's a way round obstructive people, for want of a better word. And I just need to reiterate what Gemma says. No one wants Warwickshire going into lockdown. I'm sure your businesses don't, and I'm sure all the partner agencies and the health do not as well. So we just ask for everybody's support on this, because the more people drink, the less socially responsible they will be, and that's where we've all got to step up and make sure that they are. Thank you. Okay,
thank you. We have a question in chat around the use of outdoor space. I can read this out, or do we have the poster from KBG? Are you on the line still?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes, thank you.
All we're looking at is obviously some of our venues that we do the doors on, their outside space closes at 11. But if we're up to capacity inside, we're then asking all the people outside to leave the venue completely. We were just wondering if there was any leeway on that being till the end of close. So if it was 12 o'clock, would there be any leeway for that extra hour? Which then obviously cuts down on any type of disorder.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you.
So I'm going to go first, and then Henry.
Yeah.
I'll go first from a police perspective, then I'll pass Henry on to correct things I've probably said wrong. But from our perspective as such, we're telling venues that until there is a change with the bill that's coming in regarding off sales and relaxation of certain outside areas, people must conform to their licence and the conditions on their licence at this moment in time. If that legislation, or as that legislation comes in through government that changes and relaxes things, then obviously those changes will be implemented for those premises automatically when that comes in. Should premises need to change any conditions on their licence going forward, they need to speak initially to their licensing authority. And that's probably where I'll hand over to Henry at that point, but don't do things because you think you want to consult first.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Yeah, just absolutely. Thank you, Paul. Currently, if it's part of the licence condition for the premises, you would have to apply for a variation in the licence to have that changed. If it's something that's that you do voluntarily, then you can change that yourselves. But if it's actually on your licence condition, unless you put a variation into the licensing authority, you won't be able to use that outdoor space. It has to be. You have to follow your licensing conditions. Now, as Paul's alluded to, there is possibly some changes coming into legislation regarding the use of outdoor spaces and the pavement licences and things like that. But until that comes into play, all licence conditions will remain in place and will remain enforceable until a variation notice is put into local authority licensing team. So if you want to change anything, contact the licensing team first, as Paul has said, in your local authority, and they'll be able to advise you on what you need to do.
Thanks, Henry. KBG, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's fine. It was more for the venues than us. It was just obviously to us asking people to leave at 11 o'clock. That's where we get clashes from a door perspective. Sure. When you get out onto the street.
Just to jump in on that, I think maybe it's the venues need to plan that ahead. If they've got outdoor spaces that shut at 11 o'clock, then they will need to plan ahead that their capacity is going to be reduced and make sure that they've got procedures or methods in place to ensure that the people outside are removed from the premises in a sensible way, or they've got capacity inside at that time to allow the people to move inside. So I think really that's got to be part of the premises risk assessment when they are looking at how they're going to be operating, particularly if they're going to be closing different parts of the venue at different times.
Okay, thank you. Jonathan, did you have something to add?
To be honest, I was going to say a similar thing to Henry, actually, and this goes back to this bit about scale, and you know, good people like yourselves in the security industry about working with the venue holder. So we have heard from many pubs and clubs that actually are thinking about closing the main premises a bit earlier than they would normally do, just to kind of test how things are working. So we've talked about some actually deciding to close at 9:30, 10 o'clock. So there might be a way that in order to understand how the venue works best, start having those conversations to see if that operates, because you know, we're in a perverse world. Actually, we would prefer people to be outside. It's safer. That kind of socializing, distancing thing helps us. But if actually it means that when the venue closes, then you're sending people into a crowded venue, it goes against what we're trying to do. So I would talk about, are they thinking about closing a little bit early to start with, make sure that they're comfortable with how their business and their premises operates. It's not going to suit everybody, but it's just worth having that conversation.
Thank you. So moving on then, there's a question here in chat from Catherine. Did you want to put your question, Catherine? I think this is one I can respond to. So this is around whether or not there's a coordinated list of suppliers who can help with specialist cleaning, fogging services for venues in Coventry and Warwickshire. There are two things I would direct businesses to. The first one is the Coventry and Warwickshire Chamber of Commerce Recovery Hub, where they have a section on Coventry and Warwickshire based PPE suppliers and services such as that suggested here. The other thing is the Find It in Coventry and Warwickshire portal, which is being run by Coventry and Warwickshire Growth Hub and supported by the local authorities of Coventry and Warwickshire. This is where businesses can post opportunities, but also details of their services. So I hope, Catherine, that answers your question, but if not, do come back to us by email or in chat. Okay, we're putting up we're posting some links there. So new question, KBG, did you want to ask that?
Yeah, it's just on the coverage, obviously, inside the venues of the fogging service, which is then certified for 28 days against COVID-19.
Did the panel have any comments on fogging?
Yeah. Okay. So with regards to fogging, and we've seen a few examples of some sort of longer term products, and so with regards to what we're looking at in the evidence at the moment, it's tricky because we've got no sort of recommendations in the government guidance around fogging and kind of longer term protection. And we've got to be really careful. We have to use what we know works. And at the moment, what is recommended with regards to cleaning in premises is your usual kind of cleaning products, but then also thinking about your products which are 1,000 parts per million chlorine. And those are what is recommended and what is guaranteed to be used on surfaces to be able to kill COVID-19. What we've got at the moment is it's a tricky situation. It's not to say that those products wouldn't work. There is limited evidence that we've been presented with at the moment, but my concern and our concern is that if you are going to rely on a fogging product or products that we haven't really seen a lot of evidence around at the moment, if you then rely on that and sort of stop doing those taking those actions that we know work, cleaning those contact points, regularly cleaning, washing hands, etc., then we may fall into a situation that we don't want to be in. So I think it's really, really tricky at the minute. What I would like to share with the group, and I think hopefully I can put this link out, is the government guidance to cleaning in non-healthcare settings. And that has all of the information that you require for your premises at any time. It highlights the general day-to-day cleaning required, and it then highlights what to do if you feel someone who's symptomatic has passed through your premises. I can't comment about the other, the fogging and the like, because I haven't been presented with any evidence yet. So I'm happy to provide that link for now, Ian. I hope that's okay.
Okay, yeah, so we'll pop that link if we can. If you send it, Gemma, to Louisa, she can post it, post it yourself. And we've also got the links there for the Growth Hub and the Chamber of Commerce sites where businesses can host their product information, their details. Okay, thank you. So moving on, some questions here around can customers use gaming machines, fruit machines, those kind of things in premises, or they need to be switched off?
I'm just going to come in on that. I'm not sure what other colleagues think, but certainly to me and how I'm sort of thinking about that, there's a lot of risk there with regards to kind of touch surfaces, etc. It could potentially be seen as sort of entertainment, I suppose, in a way, which we're trying to kind of step away from because of the risks of gathering around a certain area and potentially kind of aerosol particles, etc., passing between people. The touch surfaces in between, you know, doing those kind of machines, I think that would be really, really difficult to get on top of. You'd have to have someone disinfecting all the time. I don't think it's a practical option. I don't know what other colleagues feel about that.
Anybody else?
I'm happy to add a bit. I'm afraid I sound a little bit like a broken record, and I do apologise to everybody. But I go back to do what you can manage and bring to scale. You know, the problem with gaming machines, whichever ones you're using, is that it does keep people in a certain location. They are often in positions which are close to a bar, close to an area where people gather, or whatever else. So they're not ideal from the point of view of social distancing. If it was my pub or club, I'd probably say first couple of weeks I'm not going to have them working. I'm going to make sure I can manage my premises. I want to make sure I can keep my patrons safe. I want to make sure the staff feel comfortable, and then I'll add bits to it. And I would probably, if it was me, I would probably leave the gaming machines probably a few weeks down the line to make sure everything else is as you want to run it and you feel really happy with how the venue is going. That would be my view.
If I can just come in finally then, Ian, on that point. Totally agree with everything Jonathan and Gemma said, so I would say, don't use them. But legally, there's nothing that says in the guidance or anything that says that you can't have fruit machines. But if you do and you decide that you're going to have them on, you've got to follow the advice that's been given. You're going to have people stand there and sanitize it after people's use. You're going to have to make sure people don't gather around it. Like Gemma will probably say, singing, shouting is a massive risk when it comes to spreading of the virus. Hence why the government in the guidance is saying they don't want music louder than 20 dB or something like that. Basically background music. It's the same as anything else. If you provide something that's going to get people excited, for want of a better word, and start shouting and cheering or dancing or congregating together, the risk of the spread of the virus exponentially increases. So if you think about those lines as well, when you're doing your risk assessments in your premises, what you are going to let happen and what you're not, is it going to make people get excited, start singing or shouting, dancing about or congregating close together? If it is, then that's high risk and you should think about mitigating against it.
Yeah. Okay. And thinking about in terms of facilities within pubs and restaurants and cafes, does the panel have any comments about the toilet facilities and managing access to those? Obviously, they're very tight sort of spaces. Any comments on that?
Sorry, I've come in again on that one. I think again it's just about planning and managing, isn't it? And I think it's trying to making sure that you've got sufficient space. You've got one in, one out if it's that tight. Where necessary, blocking off urinals or blocking off cubicles so you don't have people within tight spaces. But it's just again about trying to manage people going in and out of the toilets. And not having too many people sort of congregating around the toilets as well. So if you've got a lot of people queuing for the toilets, obviously again they're going to have to be socially distanced. But so I think it's more about planning and how you're going to do it. So part of your risk assessment should look about toilets and how you're going to manage people in and out of them. And obviously then it's about increased cleaning, making sure they're regularly cleaned and disinfected. So any touch points, etc., are cleaned down regularly to avoid the risk, and ensuring that there's a good supply of hot soapy water in there for the customers to be able to wash their hands, not just for obvious reasons of using the toilet, but to be able to have hand washing facilities to minimise the risk of COVID spread. Not that anybody on this call responsible for this, but quite often you'll go into a pub toilets and there'll be cold water and no soap. I think that's something that some premises may need to address, because hot and soapy water obviously is a proven method of helping combating the spread of COVID.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to mute everyone. The sound's not good. You want to. And in terms of food, the food offer, this probably won't be very popular at the moment, but in terms of buffets and carveries, is it still possible to operate those in a business?
I'll come in again. I think it's highly advised not to at the moment. And again, I think it's about management. There's nothing, again, it's only guidance that you can't offer buffets and things like that, but it does increase the risk of COVID spread. So it would be much more easily managed if you didn't have buffets where people are going up and touching the same surfaces, likely to be touching the same utensils, maybe helping themselves to food, etc. If you can manage the food by delivering it to tables using your staff rather than people going up and collecting food, it would be much easier to control, again, the risk of spread of COVID.
Thank you. And it won't have escaped many people's notice that the football restarted recently. What would be the advice on showing football matches at licensed premises? Is that possible again, or not?
I'll come in on this one a little bit as well. I'm as excited as everybody else that the football started, but again, it goes back to what I said about the fruit machines as well. Really, what are the risks? What are the risks of the games that you're potentially going to be showing? It's not just about mitigating the risks about people getting excited. It's actually having to do a bit of digging as well on what the game you're going to show. How crucial is that game? If someone wins or loses, is that a big factor in someone's career as football, for want of a better word? So there could be even more risks depending on the match that you're actually showing as well. So it goes back to fruit machines. It's about mitigating that risk and whether you should be showing it or not. I think the guidance says about live performance, live broadcast and things like that, and sort of steers of suggesting don't do it. But again, it's obviously guidance, and it goes about the risks. It's about, are people going to gather? We know how football matches usually go in pubs when we have important matches under normal circumstances, and things like that. So it's the risk that involved, and it is a high risk type thing to show. I've got to be honest, it is a high risk. So guidance suggests that you don't. There's nothing to say you can't. Guidance suggests that you don't, and I think probably Gemma and Henry and Jonathan will probably all agree that it would be, as a collective, we would ask people not to, but if you are going to show it, you've really got to mitigate against the risks, like we've said all along. Yeah,
and maybe it goes back to the conversation around staged return of the premises, so not doing everything at once at the start. There's a question here from Helen. Sorry, it was a little bit more relevant a few minutes ago, but it goes back to WC facilities. Helen, do you want to come in on that?
Sorry, can you hear me now? I'm just unmuted.
Yeah.
Yes, I was just interested on sort of which legislation in a way takes priority, because my understanding, and I could be wrong, so I'm not 100%, my understanding is as part of a license, a pub's license, it stipulates they have to have a bathroom facility available. So if a public house does open and doesn't offer that facility because they believe their actual facility cannot be made COVID safe, does that mean they're breaking the terms of their license and therefore actually could be in breach of their license and be prosecuted for that? Does that make sense?
That's a good question.
Want me to come in on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
The answer to the question is I don't actually, personally, I'm not a licensing officer. I'm not going to make to give you the correct. I'm not sure that licenses do require, licensed premises do require a toilet WC. I can't confirm that. What I would say, there is legislation that if you're providing food and drink, that you should provide toilet facilities. But again, I think if you can't provide those facilities safely, and then maybe you need to reconsider your risk assessment about how you're going to operate. I do think that there is I don't know what the legislative requirement is under licensing, but we can get back to you on that one. But certainly, I think if you can't provide toilet facilities as a premises that's serving food and drink, then you need to maybe consider whether you can operate at all.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Got a few questions.
Can I just add on to that, Ian? Sorry, can I just come in on that, because obviously we've had examples throughout lockdown when premises have been doing takeaways of alcohol where they haven't been providing toilet facilities. So I think really as well, it would depend on where the premises is based to what options there are around that premises for toilet facilities. Because if you are in a more remote location or not close to other venues that may have, the knock-on effect is people spilling out of your venue and urinating in public places, people's gardens, beauty spots, etc., etc. And we have numerous examples of that around the county over the last 3 months. So I'm saying that from evidential experience that the knock-on effect and the problems may be not in your premises, but for your neighbours, which will have just as much negativity towards you as anything else.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Helen. Yeah, a couple of questions probably related to that. Gemma, did you want to? I think you were first up. Sorry, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry, just quickly, Helen or anyone else, if you need help with regards to thinking about toilets, things like that, if you've got a bit of a mental block looking at your situation, please get in touch with us at the email address above, and we'll try and help you as much as possible.
Okay, thanks, Gemma. And Rani, thank you for waiting.
Yeah, mine isn't regarding that. I'm just thinking about the staff PPE. Do they need to wear, like bar staff, what do you guys suggest? Visors, masks, gloves?
It's a good question. Yeah.
Okay, I'm happy to jump in with that. So what we've been saying with PPE is if you don't normally wear PPE, you're not required to wear PPE. However, however you wish to operate or whatever personal choices people might have, that's kind of up to them. If you're thinking that the 1 metre rule is going to be tricky, a lot of people have thought about screens, etc. You know, if you think about kind of some premises, I've seen retail, I've seen supermarkets with visors and things like that. But with regards to sort of things like retail, when we were advising retail to open, we were saying, you know, you don't have to wear PPE, and there's no requirement to do so. We would think about things like, we call it face coverings because it's tricky with PPE, but if anyone does want to be wearing things like that, or if you think, like I said, the 1 metre rule gets a bit challenging, you know, you can be thinking about screens, you can be thinking about other kind of ways of working. So it's not a yes or no answer, but there's no requirement for people to be wearing it if they don't want to. It's the other measures, it's the distancing, it's the hand washing, it's the, you know, isolating people who are unwell that is going to have the most effect at this time.
Okay.
Can I just add in, just on that point actually, because I've raised it at all the other webinars we've had as well. With regard to PPE, with regard to anything, with regard to your business opening, and I know Jonathan touched on it earlier as well, consult, talk to, explain to all your staff the rationales behind what you're doing and what you're doing, and listen to their voiced concerns. We don't want them to be afraid to voice them, because like I said, I've worked through COVID since we started, and the amount of calls as police we've had from staff saying my boss has made me to do this and I think it breaches this or it breaches that. And because those staff have not consulted, or the managers or the owners of the businesses have not consulted their staff and explained. You know, you're on this webinar, you've just taken some guidance and advice from someone who is in public health. You can explain that to your staff. So please don't, when you're telling staff or doing your risk assessments, don't just say, right, you're doing this. Let's talk to them, have your meetings. Like I know you, Rani, you said you're going to have a meeting tomorrow. Go through it all with them, but let them voice their concerns as well and listen to them. And if they raise something valid, you've got the email address there now. You could always post that question back to us if necessary. But let's prevent all those calls coming into the public bodies that have all got lots and lots to do at this moment in time because an owner hasn't explained it well enough to their staff.
Thanks, Paul. That's an important point, well made. Jonathan? Oh, sorry, Rani, come back to you.
I've got one other question regarding this is for the food service cutlery. Can we continue using our normal cutlery and condiments? Do they have to be in sachets? I know I'm not going to put bottles out of ketchups and whatever, but when food comes out, could they be in little those little things?
Sachets?
No, not sachets. The little the words gone out. Ramekin, that's whoever said that.
It's a pub quiz.
So yeah, I mean, what do you suggest, or what?
Cutlery.
I think the advice is to use disposable cutlery.
Really?
That's the guidance, isn't it, as far as I can remember? But I think I might be wrong. Gemma's looking at me. No?
I don't know actually, Henry. That just surprised me.
Yeah.
But
I know the guidance definitely says about sachets as condiments and things like that, and not bottles and things. I know it definitely says that. I can't remember what it says about cutlery, but I know for condiments it definitely does say use disposable sachets and things like that for sauces and vinegars and salts and things.
I think if you have to be fairly sensible about it. If you're using ramekins separate for each table and then washing them and disinfecting them afterwards, I think that would be a fairly sensible way of doing things. So again, I think it's about assessing the risk and deciding, whilst the guidance says to sachets, as long as you're not, like you say, putting bottles of sauce which is going to be passed around 3 or 4 different tables, then I think that's a sensible way forward.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm conscious of the time. There is a question. Is that Lydia?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to talk about the cutlery thing because obviously, sorry, my understanding of having read it, I didn't know if anybody else agreed or disagreed with this, was that so commercial dishwashers take everything up to over 80 degrees, which is where we kill viruses and bacteria, right? And so my understanding was that we had, as long as it was one person clearing tables, cleaning, putting them through the dishwasher, and then they washed their hands immediately afterwards, I thought we were okay to carry on using stuff.
My apologies.
Oh, it's gone.
You're on mute.
Lydia, I think you were saying that you were mentioning commercial dishwasher and having one member of waiting staff. And Gemma, I think you put your hand up pretty quickly after that. So are you going to come back on that?
yeah, it was I've just quickly found the guidance actually for food businesses, and it just talks about increasing frequency of cleaning. So hand touch surfaces, but then including cutlery in that. So there's no actual sort of reference to disposable cutlery being needed.
Okay.
No, my apologies. I think I was talking about disposable sachets and things like that.
Yeah, Henry,
I
heard something in the news, but it's not it's not formal guidance.
It basically says in the thing, providing only disposable condiments or cleaning non-disposable condiment containers after each use is what it says in the guidance.
Yeah. Thanks for the clarification. Jonathan, you still have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm just gonna. I think most of the stuff about the cutlery has now been answered, so I won't come back on that one. It is very much about every single premises being very different, isn't it? About how you then manage within your own premises and what you have. There's also the bit about the cost effectiveness as well. So if you've got the right cleansing routine put into place and you're managing that the right way, that's absolutely vital. I think one of the things to just kind of reiterate, a lot of the stuff we talk about is about pre-planning. I just want to really kind of labour that point. I think it was Colin and Rani were talking about pre-booked covers, allowing people 2 hours to be on a table and all those kind of elements. One of the other ways you can support your staff, this might sound slightly mad, but I've also heard people say, look, we in terms of food, we'd like people to order in advance because that way it helps our staff prepare. We'd also like to the food to be paid for in advance because actually that also enables us to support the processes that we do within our teams. People are very used to ordering and paying for things in advance. Actually, nowadays, it's not unusual that's put into place. It might help you in terms of your planning for your day and your business if you have that done. And it also might answer some of the issues that were asked earlier about if people are actually coming with large groups of people or with different household mixes. Well, if you're asking them to pay in advance and then it's evident that they are not from the same household and you're concerned and you don't want them to stay, you haven't lost any money either. So I'm just putting those things out because actually all that planning, all that preparation that you put into place right at the beginning will really help you as you run that business and just think about those as different options. Doesn't suit everybody, but it might suit people who are running covers, table, food, menus, etc.
Yeah. Thanks, Jonathan. Rani, did you have a final sort of follow-up question?
Regarding queues, I'm sure I'll get queues. Do I need to put anything outside, distancing tapes and whatever, yeah, for queuing outside?
So yes, you do. You have to have your markers outside. Please talk to your district council or to your town council, because they may have certain measures already in place. I don't know which area you're in, Rani, but they may have certain measures in place that they might be able to help you. I know, for example, Leamington have used very specialist markers within certain areas. You could talk to the bid if you're in those areas of Leamington or Rugby or Stratford. So there are different people you can go and talk to, get some advice from them. But yes, do. But I say it again, plan. If you can avoid queues, people queuing up because you've done a pre-booking, pre-arrangements, put those things in place to start with. That will then prevent people getting frustrated because they're waiting longer than they anticipate. And also, finally, sorry on this one, give yourself plenty of time between covers to clean tables, cutlery, whatever else. I've heard of people who have, done 2-hour slots, but not thought about how long it might take actually then to clean everything down before the next cover arrives. And that again builds up those queues outside. That's what you're trying to avoid.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there are any further questions from participants, you've got the email address there that you can send them through to business@warwickshire.gov.uk.
Sorry, can I just jump in just on that very last one that Rani sort of raised, which is so pertinent as well, and I know the security companies on here as well. Engage with your people that are queuing, please. Don't just leave them to queue. If you know that it's going to be 2 hours or so before they get into your premises because of what's in there, let them know. You might lose that business for that time period, but let's not have people queuing for hours and hours on the street, causing, that might get an issue for you and things like that. So engage them. If they want to queue and want to be there for 2 hours, that's down to them. But with any other queues in the nighttime economy, please engage with those people and let them know, that it's going to be several hours if that's the case. Let them know it's 1 in, 1 out, or whatever it may be, but do engage with them.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And just finally to our panel, is there anything that you were thinking of covering today that's not come up that you think still worth mentioning?
Sorry, it's me again, Ian. Sorry, just one thing, just to raise everybody's awareness on this. And I don't know how much it is across the industry and how much it is across Warwickshire. We have heard rumours and things of concerns of insurance companies not honouring public liability insurance for premises because they're not COVID secure. So please, I would suggest that you do liaise with your insurance companies to make sure you've done everything that they want you to do. Because worst case scenario, if you have someone who's infected come into your premises, infect a number of other people, worst case, there is a bereavement as a result of it. Where there's a blame, there's a claim. And potentially, you might be looking at some sort of litigation if you're not COVID secure by that person. And is your insurance company going to cover you? It's only snippets we've heard for events more than premises, but I thought it'd be worth raising. So you actually make those phone calls, check with your insurance, because there might be specifics they need you to do under the COVID regulations to actually keep your insurance up and running. And that's all from me. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone?
I would just add one other thing, Ian, and just speaking to everybody who's reopening and are going to start their premises up on this call today. Could I just ask all of you, just think what tone you want to set right at the beginning when you reopen. Yeah, it's been a kind of a constant theme, because the tone you set right at the beginning about being friendly and welcoming, but wanting your patrons also to be socially responsible, that tone that you set becomes really important, because that's the way that your patrons, your customers will follow in the way that you're setting your business. And you might want to communicate that early, or you might want to be, in terms of speaking to your staff and making sure they're aware that that's the tone you're trying to put out there. Just really think about that, because there will still be people who are really looking forward to coming to your premises, but equally might have their own challenges or trepidations about being the first time they've actually been out. Yeah, so get the tone right. Whatever it is you decide to do, and there's some good people on this call. You've asked some fantastic questions. Get that right from the beginning. Make sure it's something that all of your staff carry about them when they go about their business, including the security staff as well, who will be part of your premises. Get it right to begin with, because for all of us, if we can get this that we are all remaining socially responsible, looking after each other, looking out for each other, then the better we will do, the easier it'll be for us to manage through this and not have to go into another enforced lockdown.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think we've gone a little over time, but thank you for staying on the call. I think we'll end here. So thank you for joining us, and we hope the information today was useful. We'll leave you with some useful information links. Do please share these links, and on those links you'll be able to see a link to the recording of this webinar in the next couple of days. Do feel free to share it with your colleagues or your industry. And if there's anything else you'd like to raise with us, you can always contact us at business@warwickshire.gov.uk. So thank you, and we'll now display that information for you.
Okay, thank you.